Nuget packages and troubleshooting possible problems. In this video, I'll introduce you to Nuget packages and how to install them. Also, I'll give you a mini tour of the database references in the openair.web project. And finally, I'll give you some methods we have used when encountering errors while trying to migrate a database. Okay, I've got Visual Studio open and also the Solution Explorer with our openair solution. And I'm going to show you how to manage your Nuget packages. So the first thing you want to do is right-click Dependencies, and you'll see Manage Nuget Packages. Click that. And up here you have these three tabs, so we can currently see what I have installed. And we have Entity Framework Core, and a few other Nuget packages that we needed to get SQL databases hooked up with this application. But originally, when we didn't have any framework core, for instance, we just go to Browse, Entity Core. Let's see. And this top one here, the little arrow indicates I already have it downloaded, but this is the one we chose. You can see it has 91.5 million downloads, so it's a bit popular. The other tab in here is Updates. This can be a little dangerous. Like, normally I like running lots of updates because, for security reasons and quality of life changes, things like that, but there's the risk. I don't know if you remember the warning that was showing, or if you've noticed the warning that shows when you build the project, but that warning is a result of running updates, because all of these are independently developed, or a lot of them are rather. They have a tendency to throw warnings after you've updated one of them or several. So that's how to manage your Nuget packages. Suppose next, let's just take a little tour of the openair.web project to find some references to the database. So this might be a little overlap on another video, but that's okay. This is an important point. So if we go to the startup.cs file inside of openair.web, we'll scroll down here. So it says options use SQL Server. So whenever the application boots up, it executes all this startup code, hence the name startup, and get connection string openair local db. So this is a string reference to a JSON file that I will show you next. It's the app settings.json. That's just right here. And connection strings. So we have three actually defined here. This is the one that we've pointed the application to, and it's just the local openair db. This is one for the test database. This doesn't really need to be in here. It is at the moment, but the .web project shouldn't really know anything about our system tests. So there's just a copy of it here. That could probably be removed. Probably should be, but I won't right now. Also, this is important. At one point we had an Azure remote database up and running. It did cost money, and because of the cost and the current situation with lockdowns all over the planet, we deemed it unnecessary to have this. But after you've gotten an Azure account set up, or perhaps another relational database set up remotely, you just simply put in the server name, the database name that you gave it, like through your Azure portal account or whatever, and then it'll ask for a password, of course, and some other, I don't know what you call them, options that you set. But I know that this connection string works. It worked for the Azure database, so literally you can use this as a model for whenever you do get a remote database up and running, and that should just really work nicely and make it a little easier for you to figure out how to get the database going. So now we'll talk about troubleshooting. Let's say, for instance, that your team made a decision to change the data model in some way that's reflected in the database. And then come to find out that that change actually, you shouldn't have made it, but it's already too late, it's been implemented. Let's show you how to revert to a previous migration. So if you remember, I added this flight count in a previous video, and that was a purely fictional scenario, so I'd like to revert it back. So we're going to go to the package manager, of course, make sure we're in the openair.data, and let's show you how to do it. It's really easy. Entity framework core, and we will say update database, and the original, the name of the migration I'd like to revert to is demo migration rather than demo second migration. So there you go. Let's see it. Go ahead and build. Let's refresh this. Oops. Columns. Sometimes it takes a moment. It's got to look inside the database, and look, our flight count is gone. So that's great. It's a very easy way to revert. So again, one of the major benefits to using Entity Framework. Another situation that would arise every now and again, I'm not exactly sure of the circumstances that create it, but let's say that you're, like a teammate, for instance, has developed on their end and ran some migrations and then pushed it up to the remote like repository, and you pull it down and you try running the migration, and what happens is it acts like it probably, like it says build succeeded, and it doesn't look like there's any errors, but if you look inside of your tables, the only one that shows up is this _EF migrations history. There's none of the other tables that you would expect. And it can be a little frustrating trying to figure out how to get it to work. It took us some time to figure this out, but what you want to do is this. So entity, well, let's do it like that. It works just like, very similar to the like a Linux kernel. So you can just push up and get an old one here. We will do drop database. So that there's probably a better way to handle this, but this is the way we found to get it to work at least. So given that there's no important data inside of the database, or it's not backed up, or it would be detrimental to do this, like don't drop your database if there's important data inside, but there's not right now. We're in a development phase where there's no actual user accounts inside of the database. And this is more a problem with developing locally, because when we run the migration, we look inside of this local DB. This is where the application's looking to save accounts and flights and things like that. But after you get a remote database set up, this should become less of an issue. At least that's I speculate that that's likely the case. So anyways, I'll show you how to fix this. We're going to drop the database. Okay. And we'll say yes. And there it went. Let's refresh. And it's gone. So next we're going to use the remove migration, and we'll do that. Sometimes it takes a moment. So it's literally clearing out all of this migration stuff because somewhere there's a conflict or some sort of something went wrong and we need to just clear it out. So that removed one of them. We could hit it again if it's still not working, but we'll go ahead and do it again. So this remove migration can also just be used if you ran a migration and you decided that it's not what you wanted to do, and you just revert back and just get rid of it in there. And it'll remove, if the database was up, it would remove the history. Well, it'd probably log the history of removing it, but now the migrations folder is empty, so we can just run a migration like we would if we are starting from scratch, like I showed you in your first migration video. So let's add migration. We will say demo migration again. So succeeded, that's good. And we have the create tables just like we did before, so that looks good. Now we will update the database. Like this here, this framework.sql server, that's a Nuget packages, so that was one that we added by right-clicking dependencies and managing the packages and finding it and installing it. And so this is just a side note, but to look and see which packages you have installed in a project, just click on the project itself, and Visual Studio will open this file. And if you look here, here's that XML or something. XML, some sort of markup, anyways, where you have all of your NuGet packages that you've installed. So just like we'd expect, there's an Entity Framework Core, and there's the SQL Server, there's the tools. So if for whatever reason it's not recognizing that you've installed a specific NuGet package and you're pretty sure that you did, check here, because this is really where you see if it's actually been installed or not. So anyways, back at the Package Manager console, it looks like it was successful. There's our SQL. Let's refresh this. Yep, there it is. Tables. Yep, and there's all of the tables that we expected. So I think that this wraps up the Entity Framework Core tutorials series on database migrations. I hope that you learned something and can follow along. A side note, I'm sure there are better and more efficient ways to use Entity Framework. We thought it would be useful for you to see how we've been using it and show some ways we solved some time-consuming problems that presented while getting spun up on using Entity Framework Core. But if you have a better way to use this powerful tool, I definitely encourage you to use it. Anyways, thanks for watching.